If you can't keep the lights on, you'll spend any amount of money, right? If you can't keep the server up and the tech shows up and she wants $500 an hour, you're going to write the check. So you got to get it right, and then you got to get it cheap. But you lose credibility because the data's wrong, or it's incomplete, or or even worse, people are making decisions on incorrect data or incomplete data. Or you're telling your customer, oh, hey, Andy, I think you really need this menopause drug because I got marked as a female instead of a male, right? So I think foundationally making sure that if you don't get your data right and you try to do the fancy stuff on top, you're going to blow things up. Clarity about what is number one. A little exercise that I talk about is to ask all your execs to write down their top 5 projects in the business. They should all match perfectly. All of them,
Ideally.
You guys are
how often does that happen?
Yeah.
Never. And then what you can do is
Welcome to Blade to Greatness, the podcast where retail leaders sharpen their edge one critical skill at a time as we uncover the essential traits every retail leader needs to thrive. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
And I'm Casey Golden. Each episode, we're joined by a guest who brings one leadership skill into sharp focus. And today, we're driving into a topic that every retail leader thinks they've mastered until things break.
That's right. We're talking about building the real foundation of innovation, keeping the lights on, running lean, and earning the right to innovate. And who better to guide us through that than Andrew Laudato, COO of The Vitamin Shoppe and author of the book, Fostering Innovation.
Andy's hierarchy of IT needs is like Maslow's pyramid, but for tech leaders. If you're trying to innovate without a stable foundation, you're basically building a smart store on quicksand.
Exactly. In this episode, Andy walks us through how retail leaders can build credibility, optimize IT spend, and create the conditions where innovation isn't just a buzzword, it's a business outcome.
And now, just before we dive in, I have a quick ask for you. If you like our show, please give us a 5-star rating and drop a quick review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or Good Pods. We really appreciate your support.
And please do us a favor and check out the other shows in our Retail Razor podcast network. The Retail Razor Show, Retail Transformers, and Data Blades. You can find them in your favorite podcast player or visit our YouTube channel to find them all. Now let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Andy Laudato.
Andy, welcome to the Blade to Greatness podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, you are certainly no stranger to the Retail Razor Show, and now you've joined the select number of guests that have been on the mic with us on more than one show. It's great to have you here.
Thrilled to be back.
So today you're talking with us about something we think really is a critical skill that retail leaders should master, building the foundation for innovation. And in your book, Fostering Innovation, that we've talked about before, you mentioned a framework that you've modeled on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, showing that innovation can only thrive when foundational IT functions are reliable. So tell us more about how the framework works and how it helps leaders really build that foundation for innovation.
Sure. Well, we all love to innovate. And I think it's fair to say that in retail, we all have to innovate, right? It's innovate or die. So innovation is imperative for all of us. However, so much innovation stalls out or fails. And what I've learned over the years is if you don't build your innovation on a firm foundation, it's just not going to work for you. So if you're going to build a building, you got to dig a really big hole and pour concrete in it. And maybe that's not the exciting part, but if you don't do that, you're going to have a building that's tipped over, falls apart, or never get done.
Right.
This hierarchy is all about that. And so when you think about technology, so for IT departments, it's just use the term KTLO, keep the lights on. And it's by far the most important job, and it's the number one most important job of a CIO. And by the way, it's what gets CIOs fired if they can't keep the lights on. And I'm talking about the registers ringing and the network staying up and the emails emailing, not to be named, big cloud provider had a little KTLO issue this recently, and we all feel the pain of that. So it's job number one is to do that. Now, you're not going to win awards and be on the stage and be celebrated and promoted or invited to board meetings because you did that. It's the expectation of the job, but you also can't ignore it. So in order to do that, it's about automation, it's about procedure, and it's really about learning and also KPIs. whatever it is, we can use uptime and having an agreement that the system's going to be up 99.9 or 100% of the time. So that's job one. That's the foundation. That's the concrete. And it's necessary, but not sufficient. And so the next level of the hierarchy, and back to, you mentioned Maslow, if people remember this from college, but basically he said, if you're getting chased by a bear, you can't fall in love. And so you got to serve your safety needs. You need a nice house and, keep the bear out. And then you got to feed stuff, and then you can move on and self-actualize and build a pyramid or whatever we do as humans. So that's the same exact analogy. So next up on mine is to have a lean and efficient IT department. If you can't keep the lights on, you'll spend any amount of money, right? If you can't keep the server up and the tech shows up and she wants $500 an hour, you're going to write the check. So you got to get it right, and then you got to get it cheap. Make it work, and then make it affordable. And the reason this is so important is it's really hard to be an IT leader and go knock on the door of your executive peers and go, oh, let's go do this or that. Let's go do a project together. If your own house isn't in order, if you're not making your budget, if you're not managing your staff and your headcount and your contracts. So get it right, then get it cheap. And so the next phase up is to be a really lean, well-run machine. And a lot of the ways you do this is the same as KTLO. It's about procedure and process and a negotiation mindset and a continuous improvement mindset. Little things a lot add up. All right, so we're moving up the hierarchy, and the next level I call create value. This is a lot of what people think all IT departments do, is they do projects to implement software, and you implement software to create value, right? So it's an ROI. We're going to automate some task, and we're not going to spend as money doing it, or we're going to put in software to better replenish our store so we can run with less inventory and be more in stock. This is super important, creating value. And the most beautiful thing about it is that done well, you'll free up money so that you can then have money to innovate. So anytime you can go and work out these things. The important thing about this is to not try to take on too many things and not to have projects that fail or overburden. So my big advice is to limit the work in process. People in Agile and manufacturing lean always talk about WIP limits. How many concurrent things are you doing? I would venture to say every IT department I ever went into in any industry always has too many projects going on. So my advice is to say however many you have going on, say it's 10 or 50 or 100, make a WIP limit that's about 75% to 80% of that. So in simple terms, if you're doing 10 major things and you get number one done, so you have a priority, instead of starting the next thing, take the people that just got that work done and put them on the new most important thing. The tendency might be like, we got number one done, let's go put all these people on number 10. Well, you just took the people that were most successful in your org, put them on your least important thing. So having them help out on number one will get that done and get that flywheel going. I think they call that crashing the project, but it's like, yeah, we got some people available. Let's go. Let's get it done. Clarity about what is number one. A little exercise that I talk about is to ask all your execs to write down their top 5 projects in the business. They should all match perfectly. All of them.
Ideally.
You guys are
how often does that happen?
Yeah.
Never. And then what you can do is, you can do a standard deviation and see how far you're off. But clarity on what's number one is so critical. Imagine that you get invited to 2 meetings at the same time. Which meeting do you go to? For me, I always know because I always take whatever project's ranked higher. It's going to be my priority.
Yeah.
I don't care how big your company is. There'll always be some constraint. Maybe it's a DBA and you only have one, or maybe it's a creative or whatever it is. So when there's clarity on what's number one, then there's a better chance that number one will be successful on time, on budget, on scope, on quality. All right. So we're building up the pyramid. We got keeping the lights on figured out, running really smoothly. We're getting our projects done. They're prioritized. Everyone understands what they are. They're creating value. Finally, now you get to innovate. And I mean, what I just described could take years of work. So I know there's going to be a little bit of push and pull. You can't say, we'll be ready to innovate in 3 years. But always keeping a focus on these levels of the pyramid and shoring them up, even if you're doing some innovation. And I know we'll talk more about what does innovation mean as we go, but just to be clear on the pyramid, that's what it is. The last thing I want to say is some companies think they can separate these things out. Like, we're going to hire a, whatever the term is, a back office CIO to keep the lights on and run it. We're going to hire someone else to innovate. I just haven't seen that model work. I just haven't, right? It's, I really think it's important that these things are cohesive and managed together.
Yeah.
And you think it's very easy for somebody to find that person that has the creativity and the innovation and the pulse to innovate, to be in charge of it, and also managing, keeping the lights on and process and doing this, being in the weeds all the time?
No, it's super hard, right? That's why CIO stands for career is over. How do you
I'm like, you've kind of described a unicorn.
Just a little.
But remember, this is a leader. We're talking about leadership. So it's a person that needs to lead all those activities. So the core skill we need here is not, I can configure the server today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Run the portfolio tomorrow and then go innovate. It's a leader that can put the right people in place and make sure they prioritize these things and they're communicating the whys to their business partners. So yeah, I think that's the key, is to find a really solid, well-balanced leader that knows how to put talent around them.
So what makes your hierarchy of IT needs critical for leaders today to be thinking about and to really understand before pursuing innovation in the org?
I love this question. So you'll hear CIOs bemoan they don't have a seat at the table, right? We need a seat at the table. There's even a book called A Seat at the Table. Yeah. And it's like, are we in the room, right? Are execs off? And I'm not just talking about the formal, the informal, right? When executives are sitting around drinking coffee, deciding is the CIO, is he or she in the room? And so I think what's so important is you have to earn your way into the room. Believe me, if you're sitting in a meeting and your phone's going off like that, and oh, this is down or that's down, or we're crashing, or the stores, no one can check out, the lines are forming up, you're just never going to be invited. So demanding your way into the room will never work because there's informal. Earning your way into the room by having a really well-run, organized, always up ecosystem is what's key. Getting your projects done on time, right? If your projects are way over budget, you don't have credibility to sit and talk about what we should do next, because you got to focus on what we should do now. So the first three layers of this pyramid are almost tactical, that need to be under control so you can be strategic.
Yeah. It gives you that credibility.
Yeah.
You earn the right. You have those things right. Yeah. You've established that baseline. That's why we call it the foundation, right? Because you can't ask to go build those other things if you don't have anything to build on that's reliable.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. So Andy, are there any other lessons that retailers can take from your model when they're trying to balance that operational stability? Because you touched on before that there's always this push behind you for innovation and transformation, even while you're trying to do all these things in the pyramid to keep the lights on and to create value. Are any special lessons on how do you strike that balance?
Yeah, especially if you're new to the CIO role or to the company, to an IT leadership role, look for things that have low risk, high reward. And so, we'd love to live in that bucket that there's not a big risk here, but I'm going to get a lot out of it. So, and the most easy example would be analytics, because there's not a huge risk to add more analytics or to get some data or maybe glean some insights. Those are the kind of projects where you can get some credibility while you're building the foundation, is to do that. Just the opposite are projects that we would call high risk, low reward. And my advice is to outsource those. With some examples like the payroll system, super high risk. If you don't pay people, you're going to get in trouble. There's legal ramifications. They're going to quit. But if you're amazingly perfect at payroll, nobody cares. No one's excited, right? So you don't want to roll into a new gate and go, hey, let's put in a new payroll system. And those are two extreme examples, but I think it's a lot of these big projects like an ERP implementation, I would call those high risk, high reward. And sometimes people are hard with a mandate like, oh, let's do this. I would really try to push that off until you have some more foundation work. Or if you absolutely have to do a high risk, high reward project because it's mandated or the company can't survive without it, find a way to reduce the risk. And the simple way is to break it up into manageable chunks, right? To make it agile, figure out a part of it and break that up. But so the answer is, you're going to have to do some innovative things along the way, but try to find the low-hanging fruit, the high reward things. And that also adds to the credibility. And then one more thing I'll say is, when we say innovation, I think we all think right now, we're thinking about AI or some really amazing thing, an app where you walk in the store and it knows who you are and products fall out of the sky and land in your lap, just what you never wanted.
Right.
But innovation doesn't always have to be that exciting or sexy. Innovation might be to a process. It may be how you keep the lights on. It may be how you do that. So the word innovation, try to really think about that meaning. It really just means doing something different to serve a customer. Is kind of how I define it. So that's
innovation doesn't require a press release.
Yeah, exactly. For me, boring is sexy. Like, all right, I don't mind saving a few bucks or doing something
Right.
just a little bit
Exactly.
better because
Yeah.
you do a lot of those and they add up.
That's
They
right.
do have that.
That's right. It adds up.
Can you share an example where skipping foundational steps undermined innovation efforts?
Yeah, I mean, let's go back to the example.
Like avoid that trap?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of talk about, AI without good data is going to make you, a faster mess. And I think that's an example.
Right.
If you haven't built out a really robust data warehouse and it's in the cloud and you don't have a data schema, but you're like, oh, I'm going to put in some really fancy dashboards in every store, but you lose credibility because the data's wrong or it's incomplete or, or even worse, people are making decisions on incorrect data or incomplete data, or you're telling your customer, oh, hey, Andy, I think you really need this menopause drug because I got marked as a female instead of a male, right? So I think foundationally making sure that if you don't get your data right and you try to do the fancy stuff on top, you're going to blow things up.
That's a great point. And especially now and everyone is looking for AI to solve all of their problems. Well, Andy, this has been a fantastic, enlightening discussion on how to go about building foundation and love the framework. Thanks you so much for highlighting this topic and putting some structure behind how leaders should approach innovation.
Yeah, it's my favorite subject, so thank you.
Yes, as always, Andy, you bring much needed clarity to these important topics. Appreciate you joining us today.
You're welcome.
Well, I'd say that that's a wrap. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Good Pods. And don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube so you never miss an episode. I'm Casey Golden.
We'd love to hear from you. Follow us and share your feedback at Retail Razor on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. You can also subscribe to our Substack newsletter for highlights from every episode and visit retailrazor.com for transcripts and more details about all of our amazing guests. Blade to Greatness is part of the Retail Razor Podcast Network. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay sharp, lead boldly, stay human. This is the Retail Razor Blade to Greatness.